Hello guys, Dan here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video I will show you how to paint this Fusilier character Richard McQuinn for the Panoceania army. Actually, what will I do here? I will paint his armor with the airbrush to show you how you can get these nice highlights, and then I will do the rest of the paint job with the brush. If you don't have an airbrush and you want to paint your Fusiliers in the similar way, I already did a video how to paint your Fusiliers with the contrast paints, and I will include the link in the top right corner of this video and as well in the description below, so you can follow that tutorial. But for now, a lot of people ask me how will it look if I paint it with an airbrush. So I decided to do a short video and show you how it will look. So without further ado, let's start and do it. Just to save some time, I primed this model of the camera with the black color in a few very thin coats, just to have a nice base to start working on. First thing I will do, I will start painting the armor panels. My first color will be dark Prussian blue. I mixed the color already in my airbrush, and then I will start applying a few very thin coats. So I'm spraying like 90% of air through my airbrush and very little paint, and I will just try to paint the whole armor areas that I want to be blue. As you maybe notice, I always keep my airbrush and my miniature in the same angle when I'm doing this color, because I don't want the paint to go inside the recesses in the shadows. So always when you paint like this, you try to keep the same angle. So after a few passes, this is the level of the tone of the color that I got. So now I can start highlighting the model. For the next step, I mixed a dark Prussian blue with the green blue, 50-50 mix. Then I chose where will be my source of the light and from which angle will the light fall on the model. So I will keep my airbrush and the miniature in the same position, and then I will go and start highlighting the areas where the light will fall on the armors. So this will be really small highlights. I will spray mostly air from my airbrush and very little paint, and I will start highlighting those areas. I will repeat this step in 2 or 3 very thin passes around the model, just to have a good highlight. For the second highlight, I added a little white to the mix of the previous color, and then I start highlighting the same erased areas that I choose where the light will fall on my model, but this time I will highlight the last area. Maybe as you notice so far, I still haven't cleaned my airbrush since the first step. I'm just keep adding the colors and mixing inside. So only after this step I will properly clean my airbrush, because I will start working with a pure white color. For the final highlight on the armor, I will use the pure white. This highlight will define the highlights of the armor. So this is the most important step. So I will go on the areas that I want them to be highlighted the most and that I want them to be the brightest. And I will spray very little areas there. This will be the smallest highlight so far, so you have to be really careful not to overspray over the areas that we already painted, but even if you do, it's quite easy to repair at this stage. You can just go with one mix before and just covers the areas that you messed up, but it's always best not to. And that's it, the airbrush stage of painting this model is done. I won't use airbrush anymore. from this moment. As you can see, this is the effect that I got at the end, and I spent around between 15 and 20 minutes comparing it to the paintbrush work. To achieve the same level of effects, you will have to blend the colors endlessly, and it will take you a lot more time. Maybe we are talking about the hours at this stage, so airbrush is like a cheat at this moment. The next thing is that when we are working with the airbrush, you cannot actually wash the miniature, because if I use the wash over these highlights that I did with my airbrush, I will nullify everything and I will lose all the highlights, and all the work will be for nothing. So the thing that we need to do is that I mixed black with dark Prussian blue, and now I will go around the model and I will go into all the recesses and all the shadows, and I will paint them dark. This step will take quite amount of time, but it is a really important step that will define the shadows on this model. As you can see, I finished with all the black lines, and the armor is start taking really good shape now. Now we need to do the totally extreme and opposite thing. We are going to highlight all the parts of the armor, and for this stage I will use a pure white color. So my goal at this stage is to highlight every single sharp edge that this model have. So I will go around and I will mostly try to use the edge of my brush if I can. If I cannot, I will use the tip of the brush and try to pull very thin lines on the edges of these little armor panels. And I will call these armor panels done. As you can see, these previous two stages really defined the armor and the final looks of it. We will move now to paint his pants and his shirt. For this stage I will use the pale green color. I forgot to mention, but I don't think it's too late now. Every time I use these colors, I always put them on the wet palette, and I always add a few drops of waters so the paint flows better from my brush. At this stage I applied this color in two very thin coats around the model, so I had a good coverage over the previous color that we painted. Next step will be same one as we did the shadows on our blue armor panels, but this time I will use the heavy green and I will draw the shadows in all the recesses on the pants and on the sleeves, and everywhere where the pants touch the armor, so all those spots in between I will paint with this color. In this stage, if you want, you can use the shade and shade the pants, but I didn't want to risk for the shade to spill over my blue armor, because at this stage it will be almost impossible to do the repairs and it will be a pain. For the highlight stage, I mixed the uniform green with the ice yellow, like 60-40 mix, just to have a little brighter green color than my mid-tone. And now I will go around all the folds and all the edges of this shirt and his pants, and I will highlight them. Now we will move on to start working on the leather straps and the little leather pouches that he have on his hand. So I will base them with the Rhinox Hide. I use this color on the holster as well. This color is very thick if you use it straight out of the pot. So I put it on a wet palette and I added like 3 or 4 drops of water to dilute it and make it flow better. And I just went carefully around the model and I just painted all the leather parts. To highlight the leather, I will use a Skrag Brown and I will just go around and try to draw little lines and dots on the folds or on the edges on these leather straps, just to try to simulate the worn leather effect. So I won't pull any straight lines, I will just stipple a little and draw like some sharp lines like in some directions, just to simulate the effect, like how the leather is getting older from the use. Now we will move on and start painting some metal parts on this model. As you know from my videos, you probably noticed that I always like to paint the magazine from the gun a different color. So I will do the same in this case as well. I will use Eshin Grey. I will paint magazines with this color, and as well I pick up a few accessories on his knee pads and his boots, just to make it slightly different from the rest of the armor, because on the lower part of his legs the only color is blue and its highlights. For the highlights, I will add a little white to the mix, and I will highlight all the edges on the magazine and all those little lines that they have. And on the knee pads, I will highlight all the edges as well, and I will try to draw a little points of light on the middle of them. And maybe I forgot to mention, but I will paint the muzzle of the gun in the same manner. And guys, I would like to use this moment, if you like this video, to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. And if you can, please leave a like, because it will help this video spread to more people, so this channel can grow in the future. For the next stage, I will pick up pure white and I will just do a little edge highlights, so nothing too much, just on the areas that I want to be most exposed on the light and to have the most reflections. I will make this highlight. To finish off with the metallic parts, I will make a wash from the Periscopes, and I will wash all of them. This will create like the effect of non-metallic metals of it, so just be careful not to go over the painted parts of his legs that we already painted, but the rest of the parts, like around the clips, just wash them properly. After wash is properly dried, we will go back to the white and we will just do a little highlights just to make the most reflections pop on this model's non-metallic parts. So do a little lines on the top of the muzzle, a couple of little lines on the clips and on his knee pads and the stuff, just to make a little dots on the edges, just to make a reflection. As you maybe noticed, I'm changing the brushes all the time. Depends on the size of the part of the model that I wanna paint. I'm usually switching from 1 to 0 or 00 brushes. For the rest parts of this armor, I will use the Ulthuan Grey. So I want to create a little contrast between the blue and other parts of the armor, so I decided to paint these parts white. I will start with covering them with two very thin layers of the Ulthuan Grey. Just to give you a little warning, this color is very chalky, so I had to add like a really decent amount of water into it to make it flow good and not leave any marks while I was painting. And I used this color to paint like his shins, part of his knee pads, part of his arm pads, and some parts of his backpack as well. And for the final highlights on them, I will use a pure white, and I will just do a little edge highlight. So I will enhance all the sharper edges of these little details. Now it's time to finish off working on his gun. I will take pure black and I will just repaint the whole gun with this color, just to repaint all the overspray that happened while we are airbrushing. Just be careful when you are working around the magazine and the muzzle of the gun where we already painted, and as well when you start working on the sides, when you are getting close to the armor, just not to mess up the work that we already did. After that black layer is completely dry, we will edge highlight the whole gun and his handgun as well. At this stage I will mostly try to use side of my brush, try to make an angle from like 45° to 90° against the edges of the gun and just try to pull nice thin lines. At this stage, like you need to have a dilution of the paint up to your liking. So how do you feel the most comfortable when drawing the lines? Some people prefer to have paint thick, but then it will be difficult to draw thin lines. while other people prefer to have a paint much thinner, well, you will be able to draw thinner lines, but it will be more difficult to control the paints. So it's up to you and the practice and how do you feel comfortable of doing this. We are slowly getting closer to the end of this little project. It is time now to work on his skin. I will use Bugmans Glow, and I will just paint the all skin areas. Since we are working over the black primer and on some areas we have overspray of blue over it, I will cover this with two very thin coats so that I got a good and even coverage, so you don't see any transparency from the blue under it. Use this moment to paint his eyes. I pick up the pure white and then I painted very precisely just the eye sockets with this color. Next thing that we need to do is to paint his hair and the beard. I will use the flat earth for this, and then I will shade together everything with the face. To wash the hair and the face, we won't use a traditional wash. We will actually use Guilliman Flesh contrast paint, and we will cover the whole head with this. This will actually work perfectly as a wash in this case, because we have a darker undercoat and the base color under it. Now give it a good 10 to 15 minutes for this wash to get dried properly, so we can start highlights. For the first layer of highlights, I will use Cadian Fleshtone, and I will cover with this like, let's say, between 80 and 90% of the skin. I will just leave the most deepest recesses of the skin in the previous tones. When you go over the face, just leave the most wrinkles with this color, and the most areas that are inside his cheek and around his lips and around his eyes, you will leave them in the previous colors. For the final highlight on the skin, we will use the Kislev Flesh, and we will highlight just the top areas of the skin and the most raised areas on the face. You will paint with this color his nose, his lips, top of his cheeks, and little areas on his forehead. And don't forget as well to paint his left hand where he's holding the gun, because his glove only cover half of his hand, so you will have to paint the fingers. To finish off with the eyes, just pick up your smallest brush, little black paint, and just put 2 little black dots in the middle of the eyes just to simulate the pupils, and that will be it. I know this can be really tricky for some people and you need to have steady hands, but the only things that I can give you as advice is that you put both of your hands on the table, put both of the elbows on the table, and then fix your wrist, or put something under your wrist just to make it more stable, and draw these 2 little dots. And one of the last details that we need to paint on this model will be all of these LED lightings that he have. I will use Evil Sun Scarlet, or if you don't have this paint, any Scarlet Red will do the job, and just very gently and very precisely paint them with the red. For the little highlight on these LEDs, I will use a Fire Dragon Bright, and I will just make one like slightly bigger dot in the upper left or upper right corner of these lights. Depends from which side you want them to glow. And the last thing that we need to do on this model is to highlight his hair and the beard. For this stage I will use a Japanese uniform, and then I will just put a little paint on my brush, and I will just use the tip of brush and I will draw lines all over his hair, just very thin straight lines. Most of the hair is already molded, so it will be very easy to do this step, and you will do the same on the beard. Just draw little lines like in the downward direction. And that's it. I will transfer him to the base that I massively pre-made before. If you're interested how I did this base, I will include the video in the description below. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I wanna ask you, like, do you enjoy like this type of videos where I'm using like a little airbrush and mostly brushes? And would you like to see this type of videos more in the future, or you would like to see them less? Maybe occasionally I can do these types of video, but mostly be focused on the brushworks. Just let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, guys, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It will mean a lot to me, and it will help this channel grow. And don't forget to ring that little bell button so you don't miss any future contents when I upload the videos. And that's it for now, guys. Stay safe, take care, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.